Hello everyone, I am Nu-Trix of Synth Guy. Today I'm talking about the SE-02 from Roland and Studio Electronics. We'll go through the synthesis, explain how it works, and before we start doing that I just want to go back on who is Studio Electronics. Now you know who Roland is. You probably know the Roland Boutique synth. Now look at this box. It's a lot bigger than we used to see if you look at other boutiques box. What is the difference between these two? Well, with the SE2 you have in the box a power supply, because the SE-02 is analog, real electrical circuitry. It needs power. It needs a lot more than batteries. So these don't have a power supply in them. That's why the box is smaller. But this one needs one. So you have the synth and the power supply. Why do we call it SE-02? Well, the SE is for Studio Electronics. Studio Electronics is a company that has been making analog synthesizers since the 80s. I was really happy when I heard about this, what they call designer series, and having a partner as a collaboration of designing the synth between Studio Electronics and Roland, because I was an owner of a Studio Electronics, what they call the SE1, for almost 15 years. I actually got rid of it last year, and it was before they announced the SE-02. What it means is that they were able together to put a digitally controlled synthesizer, but that is an analog circuitry. So what we hear is analog. The oscillators, the filters, the envelope, all analog, but the circuitry that permits you to change the values and control and save memories has to be digital. So it's an analog synth, but it's controlled digitally. The basic structure of the SE-02 kind of is the classic analog subtractive synthesizer. The structure that we have seen the most since the original Moog came out with the Model D. So we have three oscillators that can be combined together. They can be detuned. We have ways to combining them using sync or cross modulation. We have a subtractive and only a subtractive low pass filter, resonance filter, which is what we expect out of this. We have two envelopes, one for the filter, one for the amplitude. We have one LFO. I wish I had more, but there's ways to trick into having more. We'll look at this. And what's not usually in is a delay. So at the end we have a delay that can be synced to tempo, and also the LFOs can be synced to tempo. That could be interesting. On top of the synthesis, you also have a sequencer, so you can actually record your sequence in it, and you can put the sequence into a song. So there's a sequence section and there's a song mode, and you have a lot of memories. There's 3 banks of memories from Roland. They're called A, B, and C, and there's a user memory where you can save your own stuff. First thing, when you look at this machine, I'll bring you closer and I'll ask you a question. Okay guys, this is the question. You look at this, it's a boutique synth. When you look at it, what do you see missing on the front panel? I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what's missing? What do we usually see? Look at this one. What do we see here? The 2 ribbon controllers. Pitch bend and modulation wheel, they're not part of the SE-02. Not there. Why? Well, it's a question of space, basically. You look at the amount of knobs you've got on this. If you had on top of that the 2 controllers, there'd be no place for the knobs, or you would have to even have smaller knobs. So the choices was made to leave the space for the controllers for the sound design and the knobs, the knobs, but you don't have the 2 controllers, which is okay. I mean, most people have some type of keyboards to use this, so that's how it works. Other thing that you have to look at the back of the machine, the outputs, they're different. You've got, of course, the same USB, You've got a power supply, which is different. We have trigger out and in, they're in the back. We have CV gate, input, CV gate and CV for the filter. Then we have external input, output, and phone. External input sends what's coming in and can be sent to like the mixer. After the mixer can go into the filter and be also processed, which is pretty cool. Let's say, let's send a drum through this and you can actually tweak it so it gets through the filter. Pretty fun. So let's go through the synthesis of the SE-02. First of all, you have on the side, you've got the control for the gliding, meaning this synthesizer is monophonic. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. The control section, you've got glide time, how long it will take to glide between. When it's off, put in linear or exponential. Now, the sound can become really loud with this. The analog circuitry of this machine can be really powerful, so you've got to be careful about speakers and headphones with this. Okay, you've got the glide, you've got the type of gliding, linear, exponential, or off. You've got the wheel mix, so how much your wheel modulation on a separate synthesizer will control the cross modulation or the LFO amount, so depending on what you want. And then you get the value. This is for changing memories or changing, memories basically, and pressing on it to write the memory. So we won't go into that right now. Look on this side here, on the other side, on the right side, you've got manual. I'm in manual mode. When you press this, memory don't matter anymore. What you have is what you see on the knobs right away. At any moment when you're using this synth, if you want to go to no memory state, if you want to go into what you see is what you hear, you press on manual while you're in patch mode, and the knob values is the sound you hear. So that's the mode I'm in right now. Let's go with this section called oscillators. You've got 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. They have no name, but that's easily, you can easily know what they can do. The first one can range between low to 32, 16, 8, 4, and 2. So basically how the pitch is. Okay. I'll put no glide for now. So that's just the raw waveform. We have different waveforms. We go from triangular, more very subtle, to it's an half shape between a triangular and a waveform of a sawtooth. Then we've got the sawtooth. It just sounds nice. A square wave. Then you've got an impulse, so a pulse wave, and you've got a smaller pulse. I'm a little surprised here not to have a pulse width value, which is often when we see in these synthesizers, but instead they selected to have a square pulse and a different shape of a pulse. So there's like 3 different shape of the pulse shape, but you can actually have still pulse width modulation of these. It's possible a bit with the cross modulation section we'll talk it very soon about. Between the first and the second one, you have a difference in the fine tuning. The first one is tuning. Okay, the second one is fine tune. Fine tune, we need to bring the volume of the second one. And this also. This is just a massive sounding synth. And I'm not even using the filters or anything, I'm only combining Oscillator 1 and 2. Imagine that third, let's turn on the third one. Just listen to that sound. It's just, that's what I remember the studio electronic sound. It's just like cool, massive sound. Okay, how you combine these is also very interesting. Is that, well, you can have envelope affecting the pitch of the second one. Okay, let's go here. I'm going to do a little envelope here, sustain. Let's bring the volume down of these one. Second one, that's the only one I hear. Bring a third one, not affected. So this only affects the second one. Well, now you go, why would I want a note that goes, pew? What's cool is that you can actually sync. When you do sync, you're going to sync the second one to the first one. And then when you hear this one, if you know what sync is about, is basically the second will be forced to re-trigger its period. So the wavelength would change to follow the first one. So do you hear the sound? Let's do this. Well, let's go like this instead. It's more obvious when you go. When it's too loud. Okay, you hear it? Bring back the first one. You get the sync sound, and because this one is detuned, you hear the or okay. You also have the third one, and there's something you can do with the third one that is different, is that you can actually have it follow the keyboard or not. So you go, okay, if I don't follow the keyboard, means that all the notes are the same. Like, why would I want all the notes to be the same speed? Well, the logic is that this can be used as an LFO, because if you use this without keyboard control, you can bring it to the lowest value. That's not a note. Well, you can use it as a note, but it's mostly for LFO. And then you could say, well, I want to use this to, and then you get into the cross modulation, and that's the section that is cool. You can say, I'm going to use Oscillator 3 here to modify pulse width modulation of 1 and 2. So I put the 1 into pulse width modulation and bring its volume up. I'm going to get rid of volume of Oscillator 3. I don't want to hear this one. I only want to use the modulation of this by sending this to pulse width modulation of 1, and it's going to change the shape of the first one. Either you follow the keys or you don't. You can create really weird stuff. So that's for the cross modulation. Now, the only problem I would say with this is that the range here doesn't go low enough. You should have like another extra low value to have this really react like an LFO. But it can still create really wacky, special, noisy sound if you want. Here you've got an Oscillator 3 that can cross modulate the two, so it's almost like FM synthesis. Actually, now I'm following the keyboard, and you hear it as, it's pretty cool. You hear at the same time how I modulate this one. If I bring this down, bring it up, do something else. Okay, that's my Oscillator 2 now. It's a triangular. If I bring the modulation in, this section is the coolest now for this one. actually change the shape. Oh, pretty interesting. So again, only 3 oscillators, but the way I'm using them right now is the third one is affecting the second one. Cross modulation, this one. Either the one we had before was having the pulse width modulation. If just for fun, we're going to send this to pulse, and also have this and send modulation on top. The amount of noisy, aggressive sound you can do with these is pretty amazing. Now the last one here, the one on top, is Oscillator 2 assigned to filter. Now if I bring that up, to hear that I need to bring the filter a little bit down so I hear that move. I'm put the filter in the middle, okay? I'm going to bring the other things down and just bring the filter, the Oscillator 2 to filter. So what I'm doing right now is that the shape, the speed of the LFO, the Oscillator 2 is being sent to the filter. Now we get into the mixer. We already listened to the volume of each of them. You know, let's have just the first one. And you've got feedback. So we've got some type of distortion right into the mixer stage. Pretty cool. You can actually change the texture of the filter. Sorry, of the timbre with this. And you get a noise. And the noise has its own, actually if you open this up, no, that's it. The noise is clearer than you. I really like the distortion. I like the fact that you can have now in some models like this one, they have a distortion before getting into the filter stage, which is pretty cool because you can create a lot of noise, a lot of, you know, a lot of content if you talk about harmonics and enharmonics, and then you can play with that. Just a massive sound. I really like this. Okay, so get rid of that for now. And then we go look at the cutoff point, well actually a filter. And this section we've got filter and envelopes. You've got cutoff. It's a low pass filter, classic stuff. You know, what we expect, 24 dBs per octave with emphasis, which is sometimes called Q or resonance. And it can really... What's cool is that it also follows the keyboard. So the resonance becomes... Let's say I go take this one. It can really become bizarre. Let's bring it that one here. Okay. Now we get into the envelope section. So we have attack, decay, and sustain. There's no release. You go, okay, how do I do this? Now, this one is a filter. This one is the envelope for the amplitude. Okay, so attack, decay, 0, sustain maximum. Let's talk about the release now. You have attack, decay, sustain. There's no release. If you want some release, well, there's actually this switch here. It goes from off, no release, to release for 1 and 2, or release for 2 only. Meaning 2, the volume. So I want release on the volume. I need to bring the decay up. I'm going to turn this on. Okay, just so we hear the envelope for the amplitude. If I bring the decay down, it means I've got the same speed of a decay and release. This is something you saw in older synthesizers. Just because of the cost of every pieces of the device, they would bring the cost down by having, you know, less pieces and having no release dedicated button, meaning you would have the same twice the decay and the release. Save some money. So it's something we saw in the past. It's not big of a problem, but it means that some shape of envelope cannot be done. I was surprised. So in this case, only this one has release, this one does not. So if I bring this down and I bring some movement in the filter, so what you have is as you release, the filter closes right away, and then you hear the sustain of the envelope for the amplitude. So that's one thing. Then there's these little thing here, norm and invert. Norm invert, you can actually inverse the movement. You kind of flip the envelope around. So instead of closing, it opens up. Okay, if you flip it like this, it starts open and then it closes. Like this, it opens. So you just invert the movement of the envelope here. You've got M-trig. Basically, are you going to re-trig the envelope every time you play? Or are you going to play in monophonic mode where unless you release all the keys and press them again, the envelope will be 1. So it's kind of a monophonic envelope. So if you're like, go turn this off, okay, so when you play notes without releasing, you're staying in the same envelope. You're not re-triggering. If you go M-trig, it will re-trigger the envelope. And you've got LFO and gate. That's a cool little thing. Now, if you're in gate, it's the normal thing. Every time you press a key, the gate of the key you're pressing is triggering how, you know, the envelope will work. Attack, decay, sustain, and when you release, the gate gets the release. If you press LFO, now what should be happening is the length of this will be linked to the LFO speed. So let's bring the LFO speed faster. So every time you go through this cycle, every time you go through the cycle of one LFO, you're triggering the whole thing here. So you don't even have to play the keys because you're triggering it. So when you press the keys, you're just changing the pitch value. So you can have some type of a drone coming, and you're not even using the sequencer now. You're just it could be pretty cool. So you're re-triggering the envelope from the speed of the LFO. So if you go into LFO, there's only one LFO here. LFO, you've got the rate, so the speed, the shape of the movement. Oh, just for fun, we'll send it to the pitch, and these are the sound that people understand the more rapidly what the speed is. You hear the speed of the movement and you hear the movement. The movement is a sawtooth. It goes ramp up and then dies down. The other way around, dies down, jump up. Triangular, up and down, up and down. Sine wave. Weird random. It's a random plateau if you want. It's just jumping between. And then you get these, and then get these are the pulse waves for the shape, different shape, and the square wave. Okay, now I'm exaggerating it so we understand where it is, but that's it. And you have the same thing. You can use the same for the filter. Oh, that's just the filter playing now. Let's go back to the... This is what I want. That's fast. Okay. Now let's talk about these here. You can send it to the filter, you can send it to the oscillator, the pitch. You've got this thing here for the movement. You know, how do you want that movement to be, you know, very obvious, but less obvious, or normal? That's kind of three different ways to move. Then you've got the mode. This is pretty cool. The 1x means it's going to do the movement of the LFO once. And stop. So the LFO becomes some type of an envelope at that point because it does only one movement. Normally an LFO is cyclic. It keeps on running. So this brings the LFO to kind of an envelope shape. If you bring it to this, let's say, I don't see that. Where am I? You go to this one here, this one. So you only have it once. It's like an envelope, close and open, or the other one. So you only have once the movement. So it's really interesting. Put it at keys. Keys mean it's going to be re-triggered when you press. So the movement will be in sync with when the key is being pressed. And the other one is free. The LFO is just always running, and when you press, you just pick it where it is. So it's a little bit difference between all of them. Okay, and the next one, sync, is about MIDI sync. If you have MIDI sync coming into the MIDI, the USB in or the MIDI in, and if you select sync LD, LD means the LFO will be synced, and the delay that you have here will be synced to tempo. If you have D is only delay, L is only LFO, and the 0 is it's not synced. They're free running. They're running their own value that you pick here. Okay. A delay, you've got an effect. So basically, it's very simple. You've got the dry, wet amount. You want to hear how much you want to hear the delay, and you've got the time. And you've got regeneration, which is how much you want it to. The only thing I want you to check though is that if you look at the back here, we talked about the fact that you've got CV, gate, CV for the filter. We've got input, you've got output and trigger. Output and trigger is for, actually the input trigger is for the sequencer, output also. The CV, the gate, and the VCF, CVN is that you can, if you have some other piece of gear like a modular synth, this could be in a modular rack mount, and the sequencer could trigger something else, and other parts of another synth could come in and control. And the cutoff, the gate, so to open and close the envelope, and the pitch. So this could actually be used as part of a modular synth without the keys and only using at the back the gate and CV. So it has another purpose than what you usually see in the boutique synth, would just press keys and you play it, or use the sequencer and you play it. So this, if you think about it in a different way, it can become part of a rack mount modular Euro rack kit, because of these inputs, and well, it sounds good at the same time, and the fact that you can have external in. Let's just try for fun what the external in works like. So I'm using my circuit. So I've got a session playing right now. How do we get sound into this? Oh, there it is. Just need to open the envelope. Okay. That's a song I have coming in. Okay. Bring the volume up. Yeah. So I've got this thing coming in. If I start playing with this, it's going to be filtered. And because of LFO sent to the filter, so I can actually link my LFO of this to the speed of my elevation, and I would open and close at the speed that just for fun. I'm just going to play now with that. And some distortion. So that's it. This is all the synthesis part of the SE-02 by Roland and Studio Electronics. Pretty nice. Analog sound, real analog sound. The only part that I don't like so much about this synth is the knobs. I mean, not all of them. Most of them are really, solid, and they feel nice. They turn correctly. I mean, they're a little on the small side, but that's my comment for every boutique synth. My fingers are big, so I can just do this, which is okay. But if you go with the one like the waveform or the range, those that you actually switches between notches here, when you switch between notches, it's hard because you need to hold it and move it. You can't just turn it like this. And because of that, sometimes it's harder to manage. And depending on the angle, you might not see the little white line you have here. So go, where am I? It's not that big of a deal because you can go by here. Other than that, love the sound, really powerful. If you're liking the shape of, the advantage of this is also its disadvantage. Meaning it sounds good. It's a cool analog synth. There's a lot of them on the market right now. What's cool about this is the footprint. It's a very small footprint for this type of analogs, technology. All these sounds are really real analog. This small footprint, to this price, you don't have a lot of them. Usually they're bigger, but you have all you expect, and the cross modulation is amazing for what you can do. And there's all these little options of sync and invert these, and the LFO instead of a gate to trigger the angle. These are really cool things you can have in this. The delay is just a nice plus to have, and this one sounds nice. And at the back, all of these gates and CVs that you have, and trigger in and trigger out, and external in, makes it a box that is very valuable in an analog world today. And at the same time, still, if you connect the USB, it becomes also a sound card. You can record the sound right from this into your computer. It's still very studio friendly. It's very portable. It doesn't work on battery. You need to power all the time. It all depends on what you want and how it fits into your workflow. So that's it. If you like what I'm doing, thumb up and follow me on my different online presences. Have a good day, guys.